Welcome to Investor Allstars 2020, where we celebrate the resilience of diversity, creativity and ambition within the European technology universe. Change in ambition across the European tech space, with investors and entrepreneurs working together more effectively than ever. The result is Europe's tech scene growing at an unprecedented rate. This year we received an overwhelming response for Investor All-Star nominations, helping to cultivate our best ever shortlist. Enjoy the show.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 18th year of GP Bullhound's annual Investor All-Stars Awards. We are not at the Hilton Park Lane this year, but in a virtual format with just as much passion and love for Europe's tech ecosystem. We are here today to recognise and celebrate the successes and achievements within Europe's tech investment and entrepreneurial community, drawing special attention to those who are shaping the industry's future and creating the global winners of tomorrow. My name is Jade Williams from GP Bullhound, and before we begin, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. The event will last approximately 1 hour, and the on-demand version will be available over the next few days and will be sent up in a follow email. We will begin with a welcome from GP Bullhound's co-founder and managing partner, Manish Madhvani, who will then hand over to Priya Lakhani, OBE, CEO and founder of Century Tech. Priya will not only be hosting today's event, but also moderating our panel. Here she will be joined by Husayn Kassai, CEO of Onfido, Peter McKay, CEO of Snyk, Jonathan Cherki, founder and CEO of Contentsquare, and Shah, co-president of Francisco Partners. And then we will get to the awards and announce our Investor All-Stars 2020 winners. Today's event is being streamed through your computer, so there's no dial-in number. For best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headphones are turned on and the volume is up. For the best viewing experience, we recommend closing any other programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. Webinars are bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browser tabs will help improve the quality. And with that, to start the Investor All-Stars Awards, I'd like to hand over to co-founder and managing partner of GP Bullhound, Manish Madhvani. Welcome, Manish.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. So with everything that's going on at the moment, it's more important than ever to celebrate the successes we're having and also the risk takers and entrepreneurs in our industry. And we're delighted to see so many people rallying behind this event. And I think it's proving it's not just the free wine and the legendary bands that attracts everyone. So over 2,000 people voted for the winners, and hundreds of firms and individuals across Europe have entered this year. We were also really grateful for the response that we received from everyone when the lockdown really took hold. Entrepreneurs really needed a platform to keep showcasing their ideas to smart capital, and many were in despair. We decided to launch the All-Stars webinar series to allow this to happen, and then within 48 hours of having the idea, 200 investors from the US, Europe and Asia had agreed to support us. And you can see a number of the funds here. And special thanks to the teams at TCV and Partech, Francisco Partners, CVC, Berengier, Albion, Endite, Ventec, and Silver Lake, who really rallied around the cause. The platform allowed some game-changing companies such as Snyk, Babylon Health, Mubi, Talkwalker, and Open Classrooms, and many of the others on this slide, who have now gone on to announce significant funding rounds. And we'll hear from quite a few of those later on the panel with Priya. I think it's a good point whenever we have these awards to reflect on the year that we've had. And I think in discussions with many of the entrepreneurs and investors, this has really been one of the most stressful years of our lives. And when we see all the entries and the achievements that come through, you start feeling incredibly proud of how many people have reacted and really emerged stronger from the pandemic. And this was evidenced by a few stunning facts that came out from the entry forms. So I'll just rattle through a few of those. So firstly, 2 companies created in Europe that reached the $50 billion mark, which was a milestone that many thought would never be possible in the tech world in Europe. And that was Adyen and Spotify. And then through the shortlist, many of the funds, collectively, they raised over $25 billion over the past 12 months. It was also really refreshing to see the young entrepreneurs delivering, and some of them, 3 in particular, have created companies that have gone on to raise more than 100 million in funding. And we'll hear from Onfido later, and also companies like Cree and Second Nature really disrupting their industries. The Investor of the Year, we opened up to public voting, and it was really interesting to see that. The league changed many times and a huge number of people voted. There were giants like Lucille and Devor from 8 Roads, Nanad from DN, Frederick from Creandum, and Tim from Augmentum, and it was really hotly contested. It was also pretty amazing to see some of the VC and growth funds returning up to 13 times their fund size to their investors. And some of these returns really rivaling the best in the world now. So really impressive entries and performance from Creandum, Albion, EQT, Carlyle, and many of the others. So I think if we were to summarize this year, it was really resilience and an underlying refusal by entrepreneurs and investors that allowed them to defy the odds. And then on a more light-hearted topic, and the topic of never being beaten, we've been inundated this year with inquiries about the Investor All-Stars football tournament that we launched last year. And this year, I think, as we announced at the ceremony last year, we agreed with Barcelona Football Club to run a tournament with them. So the All-Stars tournament was going to move to a new level. So for everybody, the plan is very much to do that next year at the Barcelona Stadium. So we will be sending out a save the date. And then to whet your appetite, we'll show you a clip of the goal of the tournament from last year, again, which was voted for by the public.
Come on, Manish. Woo!
So that goal was against the mighty Silicon Valley Bank. I hope you're all training hard this year. So finally, I'd like to say a few thank yous. I mean, this event never comes off without a support from a lot of people. Firstly, the sponsors, the premium sponsors were Oric, and then award sponsors Cooley, Shoesmiths and Berenberg. All of you have been long-term supporters, so thank you very much. And then the GP Bullhound team, who always do amazing work, working round the clock on getting the entries and then this production. So thank you to Jade, Frenza, Andrea, Alon, Dipam, Sandra, Dave, and Iman. And then really to the brilliant judges. They commit a lot of time to hustle and get the entries and make sure we're not missing anybody, and then reading through reams and reams of entries. So thank you again, the judges. So finally, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Priya Lakhani. She's the founder of Century Tech, who is on an incredible mission to leverage AI to really personalize education and save us all from homeschooling if that kicks in again. Over to you, Priya.
Thank you, Manish. I'm really delighted to be here to chair the amazing panel that we have lined up for all of you. And also because this is an event which celebrates entrepreneurship and those who back and support our entrepreneurs. And with this in mind, I'd really like to welcome to the virtual stage 3 exemplary entrepreneurs with star quality, drive, resilience, and ambition. Please welcome to the stage champion at online pool at 12, Husayn Kassai, CEO of Onfido. A master of resilience, this person proposed to his wife until she eventually said yes. I think he proposed 3 times. Jonathan Cherki, founder and CEO of Contentsquare. And Ironman, Peter McKay, CEO of Snyk, who ran his second Ironman in 2019 and raised $50,000 for cancer research. And we are privileged to also be joined by the esteemed and avid Spurs fan, Shah, co-president of Francisco Partners. Welcome to the stage. So I'm going to get right into this panel. Earlier this month, billionaire Stanley Druckenmiller said of the bubble that we're in with high valuations, such as some of the 50x revenue IPOs that we're seeing. Everybody loves a party, but inevitably, after a big party, there's a hangover. And then Stanley went on to say that we are likely to experience a challenging 3 to 5 years ahead. Deep. These tech valuations that we're seeing, are we about to have a very, very sore headache?
Well, thanks, Priya, and appreciate you all having me on board. Look, I think, and you would expect me to say this, we're technology investors. We have been beneficiaries of the rise in technology valuations over the last several years. You would not be surprised in our recent fundraise, we're asked this exact question, I can't tell you how many times. The reality is we think immediately back to 1999. As the time. Is this the same as 1999 or is this different? And we actually believe it's fundamentally different. So yes, absolutely, there are companies going public today at 40 times, 50 times, 70 times revenues. However, I think the big difference we all believe is that these companies that are going public today are real companies with real proven business models, with huge market opportunities and a real disruptive opportunity in front of them. They are not some of the thin vaporware companies, I will say, that went public perhaps in 1999. So we think these are real companies. Are they richly valued? Yes, but are they real strong disruptive companies? They are. The other interesting fact, which we think is totally different for 1999, which we talk about a lot, is if you look at the top 10 public companies as of December 31st, 1999, the top 10 traded at an average of 17 times revenues. If you fast forward to today, the top 10 tech companies globally trade at about 6 times revenues. So are they very richly valued? Yes, they are. Are we likely to see potentially some correction? Quite possibly. Do we think it's the level of exuberance that we saw in 1999? Certainly the data to us does not suggest that that's the case.
Thank you. And Peter, Husayn and Jonathan, you've raised $200 million, $100 million and $190 million respectively within months of each other in the height of COVID. So the pandemic doesn't seem to be diminishing interest. You will have had numerous back and forth conversations, I'm sure, with your investors and maybe those that didn't end up being on your cap tables. What are your thoughts on the bubble? And was it a challenge to raise such a significant amount in this environment? I'll go first to Peter.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And again, thanks for having me here. No, it was, for us, it was, continue to run your business. I think COVID for us was really an acceleration of this digital transformation and developing these more cloud native applications that we're securing. And so to us, it was more of an accelerant. In the fundraise was not a challenging process for us to go through, because most of the funding was coming from our existing investors. So the people who knew us the best were the ones that were the most eager to invest, and because they saw the underlying kind of fundamentals of the business, which I agree with Deep, was very different for some of us who are old enough to go back to the dot-com bubble way back, that they weren't fundamentally strong businesses. These businesses today are helping companies make these massive transformations to be more, transforming their business to be more software related. And for a lot of the companies today, they're enabling companies to be far better at what they're doing and helping them make that digital transformation. And we're part of that journey. So it's, for us, I think it's, run a good, fundamentally strong business. Make sure you're listening to your customers and you have a good, the future of how you see the vision in front of you, becoming a very big company. And that's what we've done. And I think the people who know us the best are the ones that are the most aggressive to put more money in.
Jonathan,
Yes, I'm pretty agree with Peter. COVID is definitely an accelerator of the digital transformation, and I don't think it's a bubble. Even I don't think there will be correction. Let me explain you why. My parents, they are 70 years old, and for the first time, they decided to buy online. And now, for them, it's cool, and they keep on buying online. My father-in-law is now playing poker online, and even if he can meet his friends to enjoy, he keeps on playing online. So I think that is just a change, a shift to a new world. COVID is just accelerating this transition, and that's why we can see a strong resilience of the tech industry during this period. So I don't expect specific correction. I even expect more and more power to the tech industry. That's why I recommend all of you to invest a lot in the public and the private market.
Thank you, Husayn.
I respectfully disagree. I think we're in a bubble, and there are two ways that this is coming through. The first is the numbers. It's a bit lost in the numbers because there are fewer companies raising significantly more. So it seems as though the whole industry is raising a lot more. It's not. It's actually few companies that are in fact raising significantly more. The second part of it is it's less to do with the tech industry. Why we have this bubble, it's more regarding non-tech industries, and there are so many. Well, the majority of other industries outside of tech are doing so much worse than they have been historically. That's just increasingly disproportionately making tech attractive to the capital that cannot be effectively deployed elsewhere, whether it's stock market, residential, or any other, well, the majority of the other sectors. So the tech industry, it's one of the few that's growing, and that's great, but that's in part because others are doing worse, not necessarily that tech is extra special for any specific reason. And that's why it's disproportionately getting more attention and funding than it would otherwise under normal circumstances. And it's probably going to last until we have a alternative state where if there are other industries that start to become profitable again.
Thank you. And if we're going to potentially see a correction, as Deep may suggest, that may happen. And Husayn, if we take your view, then as CEOs of these businesses, are you rather stressed about the fact that you might be going through a hangover in a few years, or how are you preparing for that? Is that changing the velocity in terms of your direction? Husayn?
We have very little. I speak on sort of our behalf at Onfido. We as one entity, one micro firm, we have almost no impact on the whole industry, essentially, because we're a tiny company. And so for me, it's kind of, you play the cards that you're dealt. So whenever the time to fundraise comes, you see what the market is like, what the comps are, what you can achieve, and you sort of plan accordingly. So because it's so out of our hands, thinking it through or worrying about it in essence is kind of not constructive. But what we can control is raising more so that we last longer. And in case there are turbulent times, then we're sort of safe and we're profitable and whatever else that the metrics may be. So in my mind, if I were another founder, I would advise that there's no need to worry about anything. If you have the opportunity, raise more now, because in times of uncertainty, it doesn't matter what market or what time period in history. If in times of uncertainty, you want to make sure that you're both stable and can reduce that uncertainty by not being dependent on the market as much. And a volatile market is not one that you want to be dependent on, whether it's a bubble or not.
And Deep, I saw you nodding when Husayn was speaking there. What are you advising your portfolio companies?
It's fascinating. So if we even just think back to the last 6-7 months and the journey that we've been on, we had a number of portfolio companies where our advice was prepare for doomsday, prepare to conserve as much cash as possible, make sure that you're managing expenses. And the reality is, for tech companies, it has not been as bad, and so they've actually been able to expand. But beyond that, what we say to our companies is, it's exactly what Husayn said. You can only control what you can control, and you can't control the uncontrollables. None of us control the public markets and the exit. So what we tell our companies to do is focus on executing. As we think about making new investments, we focus on looking at resilient businesses that come, whatever is going to happen to valuations, will be at least performing as well as we can. And then the valuation environment is something that we fortunately have the flexibility that we don't have to sell all the time at any time. And so we say control what we can, and let's not worry too much about what we can't control. So that philosophy I very much agree with Husayn.
But one can see how with further acceleration towards online, you've got Snyk's business, required by many more applications online to ensure confidence and security when using open source software. You can see with Contentsquare's UX analytics that I've been looking at, tightening a business's funnel. I saw your case study on Clark's shoes. It was really fascinating on your website, and increasing their ARR by millions. You can see how that's really important, taking from a customer touch point to conversion and making that tighter. And Onfido obviously required more and more to verify identity online. But with all of that, and you're representing 3 businesses where we can see this acceleration to online and the opportunity, can you tell us a little bit more, and by all means with your portfolio companies as well, can you please share some insights into how have you changed the business model in the last few months, considering there is acceleration? Has anything changed in terms of the model, the innovations that you're creating? We've got a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this session now, and I'm sure they'd love to hear about what you've been doing. Have you been presenting particular model changes to raise these huge funds over the last few months? Can I go to Peter first?
Yeah, no, I think, when COVID happened, there was a lot of advice. Everybody had advice, what to do and how to change. A lot of it was, this doomsday, cut back and, conserve cash. And for a lot of companies that could have been absolutely the right decision to make. For us, it was more of no, we kind of looked at it and said, this is an opportunity. This was an accelerant. We invested heavily. We started growing, investing in our platform and others. And to your question on the model, we very much built this kind of product-led organization. Very early in the company's life, 5 years ago, was very much this bottoms-up developer, kind of this adoption of our technology via a freemium. Like, try it. Everybody tries it. And I think what happened was over COVID, and even before COVID, this buying journey was happening more before they even spoke to any of us. That they've already gone through 40, 50, 60, 70% of that buying process before they even talk to you. And so we needed to cultivate that far more, and we needed to foster that bottoms up adoption. We built a developer community. There's 25 million developers around the world. We wanted to make sure in an easy way, we helped with non-commercial content to get them more aware of develop fast, but stay secure. And that led to this freemium adoption, which led to kind of this very, no touch, low touch model of, helping them, try and buy. And so what changed was, number of transactions picked up, the big deals weren't as plentiful. Like, we weren't going after and saying, I want to get a $2 million, a $3 million deal, but we did more transactions. And that's really what we want. Get into new accounts and then expand once you got in. So it accelerated some of the motions that we were doing, but it also allowed us to kind of think differently about how we're going to, scale our business, not only in Europe and North America, but also the rest of the world, which has turned out to be, the timing turned out to be right. And the growth has accelerated by some of those moves, a lot of those moves that we made.
Thank you. And Jonathan, how about you? What about your business in terms of clear usage and this being a catalyst for your business? Where are you going to be investing those funds, and how are you adapting?
So about adaptation, I would say that this period with a lot of uncertainty, it's a period where you need to be more flexible, more reactive, with more contact with your client and a lot of proximity. But I think it's a unique also opportunity to keep on investing, and even to keep on investing more. If I have to make a comparison in a horse racing, how do you recognize the winning horse? It's not the one that starts the fastest, but it's the one that accelerates when all others slow down. And if you are able to double down where everyone is slowing down, to keep investing in innovation, to recruit the best talent, to pursue new business line, to expand in new geo, you will have a lot of opportunities. So I think that Of course, we were lucky to not be so much affected because there are pans of the industries that were heavily touched, like tourism or jewelry. But definitely COVID in an acceleration of the digital transformation. And we saw more and more people asking, how can I accelerate and improve my conversion? What happened online? What are the new segments? The example I gave about my parents or my father-in-law was just an example to say, look, there is a full new market in front of us, new segments where you have a strong opportunity. It's time to understand them. It's time to invest here to maybe take more and more market share, to assume the importance of your culture and to go beyond yourself. So that was the trajectory of Contentsquare, even if after first week, we heard a lot of investors saying, be cautious, take care of your cash, take your time. But if you really feel that your market will grow through what is happening, push fast. And that's why we are deciding to do with Contentsquare.
That's fascinating. So be cautious, be careful. Husayn, earlier we talked about get as much cash as you can. You can then last this period, right? But what about doubling down and taking advantage? What has your business done?
So in some ways, I think it was Darwin who said, if you look at survival of the fittest, it's not, history has shown over and over again, it's not the strongest. It's the species that is most able to adapt. And I think that's very appropriate for, at the very least, sort of competitive markets like the tech world where we live in. So far as doubling down, I think it's a role of any co-founder or founder or CEO to essentially take information and the market and sort of signals and help make sense of that to the team. So COVID has impacted almost every business, and where it's been relevant for us, essentially for the team, the message was, we're a remote identity verification company in an increasingly remote working world. So what we're doing is even more important. And in that sense, we've been able to double down and focus on it even more, because the purpose and the mission of us as a company creating this open world where identity is the key to access, in our view, has never been more important.
And so we've got 3 founder CEOs here, Deep, who clearly know what they're doing. But I mean, come on, you've got a portfolio of companies. Not all entrepreneurs and CEOs want to listen or adapt. Can you give us some examples of maybe where you've had to force them into it?
Look, it happens. And obviously there's a difference between when you're a minority investor and you have to cajole them, or being a control investor where you have the privilege or pleasure of being able to at least be a little bit more forceful in your guidance. The reality is, not all companies want to cut costs, and some need to, and some it's not what they want. But if they're selling into the retail and hospitality sector, even if it's the greatest technology in the world and your customer base is struggling today, you need to adapt. And so one of the things as we think about technology is, yes, technology is important, but your end markets are critically important. We thought, to give you an example, specific example, that our healthcare IT portfolio, which is very strong in the US, of companies selling into the hospital sector in the US, would do just fine through this, because healthcare is going to have greater focus. The reality is the COVID upturn in what they did to hospitals, clearing out all elective surgeries, was so dislocating to hospitals in the US that we found, perversely to what we expected, some of our healthcare IT companies selling into hospitals were struggling, or were certainly seeing weaker demand than we expected. And so they had to adapt, they had to take some cost out, but there was a lag because it wasn't what we were expecting. So you really have to understand what those end markets are. The other area, just to pick up on that, is all 3 founders talked about investing at times like this. You can invest organically, which is the natural way a growing business would. What we have found to be very effective, and we didn't expect this back in March, is our portfolio has been very acquisitive. So we have about 50 companies, to give you a sense. We've made 5 new platform investments through the lockdown, which we were not expecting to make back in March. But our portfolio has made a further 20 acquisitions during that same time, in terms of bolt-ons, add-on acquisitions. And it's seen this as a way to grow, to strengthen its relative positioning during these times and take advantage of maybe having a slightly stronger balance sheet. Sorry for the background noise.
No problem. No, that's fascinating about adapting through being more aggressive with M&A. So Deep, I'm a really diligent chair. And so I went through the archives and I heard you speak in 2017 yesterday. I was rewatching, and you spoke about the difference between European and US founders, and how European founders are far more likely to look for a quicker exit and exit earlier, whereas the attitude across the pond is more attracted to sort of significantly higher growth. Is this still true 3 years on, and does it affect the investments that you make in Europe?
Yeah, I wish you hadn't looked that up, but anyway, look, I think
got me on the job.
There you go. I think there's an element of truth to it still. I think failure is still celebrated more in the US than it is in Europe. There's still greater stigma. That doesn't mean that's everyone, but there's obviously exceptions, but I think it is more the rule. However, and I think this is the one area in which it is changing positively, is one thinks about the ecosystem for companies to be successful and grow up. Manish mentioned Spotify and Adyen and those companies that have done incredibly well. There's multiple things. There's the founders and the entrepreneurs' own personalities and desire to go big, but also there's the funding environment, and there's the IPO and exit environment. And it requires all these things to come together as an ecosystem. It's why the Silicon Valley has been so successful. It's the coming together of multiple ingredients rather than just one silver bullet. And actually, if you look at those other elements, the IPO market is definitely more open in Europe today for growth companies than it has been in the past. The funding is growing. Just to give you an anecdote, Sequoia Capital, good friends of ours, we think one of the premier VCs in the world with respect to everyone else here, they're now coming to Europe. And I think that's an enormous vote of confidence in the European tech scene. And so I think the other ingredients that we're seeing there are absolutely building to be able to have more and more attractive long-term growth companies in Europe. And that's making us more bullish as we think about investing in them.
So, Peter, what's the secret then? You're a shining example, along with Husayn and Jonathan, of ambition and growth and not settling too early. So, what have you had to do to instill culture in your business to ensure that your teams are also equally ambitious?
Yeah, I agree with what Deep said. I think a lot of that has changed, that perception over the years. And as more and more of those Silicon Valley companies that said, "Hey, I'm only going to invest in companies that are within 10 miles of my house," I think all that has changed. More and more they're seeing, "Hey, I got to go find opportunities around the world." One of our big investors, Excel, have been with us since the beginning, and they're very strong in Europe. They're very aggressive. And I think, with COVID as well, I think it's no longer these hubs anymore that you got to be in Silicon Valley, you got to be in Boston, or you got to be in Austin, Texas, or different parts. I think right now it's so distributed. And I think the opportunities for entrepreneurs to build companies across Europe has never been stronger. The funding and cash is there to do it, to invest, to find those right opportunities, invest in the right entrepreneurs. And I think that, I think the world is flat. I honestly believe that, increasingly these opportunities across Europe, I think are going to be better than the opportunities in the US. So I think everybody's coming to the realization, there's not as many, but that's changing as well. And so, for us, we built a business, a culture in our company that is very, very distributed. We're across Europe. We're in the US, we're in Canada, we're in APJ, and that's been a big part of our culture is, diversity of, your geography, your religion, your gender. I mean, everything today is, the issues of the past have been, a lot of them have moved aside and made it, an incredible time to be in tech, just in general.
Thank you. And Husayn, so is it just the fact that people are recognizing Europe has as much opportunity when it comes to your team, the people that you're leading? What have you instilled in terms of culture to make them as ambitious?
On the market sizes and returns or valuations, the US is on average 6 times greater as far as the market size goes. Depends on what industry you're in, but compared to just the UK, it's sort of a 6 times difference. Partly, secondly, historically there's been more capital available, so you'd be able to sort of grow larger, as has already been pointed out by Deep. That's correcting a little bit, and so the hope is Europe will see an increasing number of high valuation exits. And on the ambition front, so for us, from the outset, we were pretty direct about the fact that we think the next big company will be an identity company, and we sort of explained why we think that is the case. We've said that there's no guarantees it will be us. In fact, it's going to be very tough for it to be us, but it will be someone, and it's upon us to work hard enough to make sure that it is us. And so those are the 2 points, both around the high exit valuations and instilling that culture of ambition. I would say on the culture of ambition, in my mind, in a simple way, there are founders that are really great at building companies. They enjoy doing that over and over again. And then there are others that are kind of more like mission or purpose driven. Like they just want to solve a problem. So those ones are happier to stick it out for longer, insofar as they get closer to solving a problem. And obviously these are not mutually exclusive. Often that there's a significant overlap. But in my mind, those are specifically focused around solving a problem tend to last a little bit longer. It's typically of the last sort of few cohorts of IPOs that from incorporation to IPO, it's been 14 years. So I know we have this 5-year cycle in sort of the venture capital world and so on. The actual data is typically 14 years for European IPO exits.
I'm going to move on to ask Jonathan a slightly different question now, which is, Jonathan, we've heard about investors, we've heard about sometimes a strategy used by funds in order to ensure that companies adapt. How do you select the right investor? So some businesses can take whatever they can get and others have choice. So what tips have you got? And while you don't need to share specific examples and get into trouble with people, what we'd really like to hear, hypothetically, of course, is any common pitfalls for other entrepreneurs when selecting investors when doing such a large round.
As an introduction, you told me that it takes me several times to find the good wife when I and I think it's pretty the same with investors because it's a real long-term relationship you are developing as more than just a financial partners. To double down on the different points, first between European and US VC, I think the last 3 years we saw a big change in the world. Inside and outside. At the inside point of view, we saw more and more cash coming from European VC or European investor. And we saw more and more US VC investing in Europe. Several reasons for that. About R&D, when they analyze the data, and the US VC are very focused on financial, I would say, they were very astonished to see the ratio about quality, price and loyalty about the European engineer. It's like 2 to 3 times better than what we can find in the US. And secondly, I think we have a new generation of entrepreneurs coming with a lot of ambition, not just here to make a company about $100 million and 10 or 20% of positive EBITDA, but company who will be blockbuster, who will impact the world with the good value and the good culture. So when you select an investor, you have to find the one who follow your culture, your value, and what you really would like to accomplish as an entrepreneur. So it's a very important momentum. It's not just a question of cash and valuation. It's easy to say when you have a lot of proposal in front of you, but I think part of the success of the company, it's also the good alignment between the CEO, the executive, the team, and the investor having the same objective. And a quick tip, I would say that what was important for me in addition to sharing the same value was also to be sure that they can bring additional value because cash is everywhere. Expertise in our market, strong network, helping the company to go from where we are today to the next 5 levels that are not just good for today, but who will be good for tomorrow. And we were super happy to have BlackRock and all our existing investors to support us to accomplish this great mission.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up on this point because we're out of time, but I'd like all of you to answer. So Peter, is finding the right investor as difficult as finding a wife?
Wow, that's a good question.
Well, Jonathan raised it.
Yeah,
depends on the wife.
Also, it requires expertise. I mean, both of it is based on trust and relationships and similar goals and objectives. And I do think, to Jonathan's point, you're being aligned on what you're trying to build and how big of an opportunity is it. So the vision, the mission of the company, and being along for that journey versus a short term. I'm going to go with you for this stage, and then you're going to go get someone else that's going to go this stage and this stage. I do think it's very much a partnership that brings that expertise that can actually help you on this journey, not just on where you are today, but on all the different stages that you go through to get to, where you think you can get to. And I think that's just, talking to a lot, reputation, but it ultimately comes down to trust. Are they going to be working with you for the long haul?
And Husayn, very quickly, match made in heaven so far?
More or less. I would just say it's much more important who the partner in the investment firm is as opposed to the investment firm. And that you want a partner that is hungry and that will give you time. Because if there's a partner in an incredible firm, but that is spread across 30 or 40 in a portfolio, then their personal reputation won't be a bet on you and your company doing well, and they may not be able to give you as much time. So I would put an emphasis on the partner, not just the firm.
Thank you. Deep, 3 best traits that you look for in a founder.
Hunger, number 1, number 2, and number 3. It's hunger, and then the other thing I would say is execution capability. So lots of founders have the vision. We have something framed on the wall in our firm, which is to say, vision without execution is hallucination. And so we want founders who have the hunger and the ability to execute. That trumps almost everything.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm afraid we've run out of time for today's panel, but that was super insightful. And I hope that everyone else enjoyed that discussion as well. And you're going to leave with some new ideas and thoughts, or at least, which is easier if you're looking for a wife or an investor. That's up to you. But a big, big thank you to all of our panelists for sharing their valuable time and insights with us. And we're going to move straight on to the exciting Investor All-Stars Awards ceremony and announce this year's winners. So Investor All-Stars is about championing diversity, creativity, and ambition within the European investment and entrepreneurial universe. We are extremely proud to present the shortlist for this year's Investor All-Star Awards. This year, 3 categories were open to public vote. We had Entrepreneur of the Year, Investor of the Year, and Service Provider of the Year. We want to thank everyone who voted. We were blown away by the volume of submissions and the 2,000 plus votes that Manish mentioned earlier that came in from the tech community. The full shortlist is available online at gpbullhound.com, and we're all really excited to see who's going to take home the trophies today. So our first award this afternoon is Entrepreneur of the Year, sponsored by Oric. Achievements. The All-Stars community clearly loves its wine voting in droves for Hyini and the world's leading wine app Vivino. The company saw massive growth following the global lockdowns, with sales growing by over 300%. And highly commended in this category is Maria Raga from Depop. The next award is Investor of the Year, and this is sponsored by Shoesmiths. The shortlist is Congratulations. The public voted for Stephen as its star investor this year for leading investments in well-known companies such as Panacea and Go Cardless. He's also been a driving force in supporting entrepreneurs and the industry throughout the pandemic. And highly commended in this category is Lucille Cornett from 8 Roads. So on to our third category. This is Service Provider of the Year. Congratulations to the winners. So Service Provider of the Year, the shortlisted candidates are voted for Oric as its favourite service provider. In the last 12 months, their London VC practice has completed 225 deals, raising over $5.5 billion for its clients. Congratulations, and highly commended in the category are Goodwin. The next part of the awards ceremony is about to commence, and the next award is for Growth and Buyout Fund of the Year 2020. And the shortlisted candidates are the judges were really impressed with Francisco Partners managing to raise $10 billion in new funds while also investing $1.4 billion. They had several notable exits, including the Metaswitch sale to Microsoft for $700 million. Congratulations, Deep. Highly commended are the Carlyle Group. So well done to you. The next award is for Exit of the Year 2020. And the shortlist . In December 2010, they were the first investor helping the business through to its $1.8 billion exit. Zynga in June 2020, this returned a staggering 200x on its original investment. Congratulations. The next award is for Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2020 in memory of Mark Seber. The shortlisted entrepreneurs are The judges were really impressed with how students, Janos, I hope I'm saying that right, Janos and Daniel maintained a cohesive culture while creating numerous hit games and a $160 million exit to Ubisoft. Highly commended in the category is Miko Kusi with Walt. The next award is for Venture Capital Fund of the Year 2020, sponsored by Cooley. And we have an amazing shortlist. For Crianzim, raising a new oversubscribed fund and delivering some of the best returns ever delivered by a VC fund to their investors. So congratulations to you. Our last award for today is Tech for Good 2020, sponsored by Berenberg. And here is the shortlist. really impressed with the Female Founders mission to create a pan-European ecosystem for female entrepreneurial minds. Their innovative work now reaches more than 100,000 people around the world. Congratulations to everyone. What an amazing achievement. And congratulations again to everybody who was shortlisted this year. You can again see the full shortlist, see your name in the lights on gpbullhound.com. Thank you to all the panelists and attendees for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Obviously, it's not quite the face-to-face event, but I'm sure you enjoyed that panel. And it was a great pleasure to be your host and share such an inspirational afternoon with you. A big thank you again to our sponsors, Oric, Cooley, Shoesmiths and Berenberg for their support and for making this event possible. For more information on upcoming events, please do check out gpbullhound.com or email us at events@gpbullhound.com. And we look forward to welcoming you all again soon. Check out the football that Manish mentioned and have a fantastic evening. Thank you.